Welcome back. This is the Ben Shapiro Show. So one of the big pieces of news of the day, the NBA has now suspended the regular season until further notice. That, of course, is not a grand shock given the fact that Rudy Gobert, the center for the Utah Jazz, was apparently infected with coronavirus and was walking around touching everything he could possibly put his hands on. And now we have another member of the Utah Jazz who's been infected. The NHL is announcing the delay of its season. The MLB is announcing the suspension of spring training, which means the delay of its season. Joining us on the line to discuss all of this is Clay Travis. Clay is, of course, the analyst on Fox Sport 1's College Pregame Show. He's also the host of Fox Sports' nationally syndicated Outkick the Coverage. Clay, good to talk to you.
What's up, man? How are you?
Well, hanging in there. It's really obviously a really scary time for everybody who's watching all of this stuff. Obviously, the activities of Rudy Gobert are really not responsible for what happened in the NBA. I think it was basically inevitable that all of these sports leagues were going to have to, at the very least, get rid of the crowds for the moment. And now that they are canceling these games altogether, what has been the impact on both the players and the fans?
Seismic. Unlike anything we have ever seen before. I don't, I know in sports and in current events, we have a tendency to grab hyperbole and exaggerate current events. But I think without precedent for certainly the vast majority of people's lives, this is unbelievable. And to have, I think what you said is right. Rudy Gobert accelerated what may have well already happened, but he took out the medium ground, which was we might have played games with no crowds for a month or so, right, if the players had stayed healthy. And that was going to be sort of the compromise between, business as usual and an adjustment for coronavirus. And then when Gobert tested positive, we just skipped right past that sort of interregnum of the games without crowds. And now, I mean, look, I'm sort of stunned, right? I mean, I do a 3-hour national sports talk radio show every morning, and I got from 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern to fill every day. And I tweeted, I guess, my little son's little league games are not canceled right now, so I guess I can come in and treat those like Game 7 of the World Series every morning. I even tweeted, like, should we all start watching a television show together? People who usually spend their mornings with me, but I mean, literally, I really don't know what to say. I mean, we do a sports gambling show every day on FS1, Lock It In. I pulled up the sports gambling app, and there's literally nothing to bet on.
Yeah, no. And over-unders on coronavirus. Over-unders on coronavirus.
I mean, literally, it's unprecedented. And so I think for anybody to kind of forecast exactly how long this situation is going to go on is well above my pay grade, certainly. But as you look at the scenarios that are occurring globally, I think the question is, can the United States be more like South Korea than we are like Italy? And I think that remains to be seen.
Obviously, this is very scary stuff. Some of the measures that have been taken in terms of the NBA. Mark Cuban was asked last night in the middle of the game about the suspension of the season. And Mark Cuban, I thought it was pretty great. He actually suggested that he was going to come up with some sort of measures to be taken that would help out the hourly workers. People forget that there are economies that don't just involve the players. I mean, the players are going to be fine. They have guaranteed salaries in some of these sports. At the very least, they're millionaires in most of these sports. But a lot of the hourly workers, the people who are working the concession stands, the people who are working the ticket booth, all those people are basically on furlough. Have there been any discussions internally at any of these leagues about making sure that all these people get sort of the salaries that they need in order to get through this time?
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be some discussions about that. And as well as I do as a lawyer here, let me put my lawyer hat on. You can join me. I mean, the lawsuits that are going to come out of this coronavirus outbreak are without precedent. But, you think about it. Let's say I'm sure the NBA has loss of season, for instance, insurance with somebody out there. And I don't know what they would have been paying for that every year. Probably whoever has that insurance is like, man, we should have been charging a lot more than we did. But, in the event the season doesn't come back or they miss 15 or 20 games, what sort of compensation models exist for not just the teams, not just the players, not just the owners, but as you just said, everybody who is employed inside of these arenas? What about the cities that rely on these arenas to be occupied and the concession stands that are going to be sold as a result? What about all of the different television contracts? I mean, think about what in the world. I mean, I work on FS1. I work at ESPN. Obviously, is out. What are they going to put on? Yep. I mean, there's literally no sports programming that they can put on. I guess they can put on, like classic games, basically let you know, hey, we're going to go back to the Lakers versus the Celtics, and instead of playing NBA real games, we're just going to play old Michael Jordan games, things like that. I legitimately don't know, because again, to circle back to what I said, we're in a situation which occurs very, very rarely. There is literally no precedent in the modern era for anything akin to this in the world of sports.
Yeah, I mean, the last time we saw something like this was actually in the middle of World War II, when games were being shut down and seasons were being suspended. We really have not seen anything like this in modern America, really, in history. So it is pretty astonishing. So, Clay, this does shed some new light on the NBA's willingness to do business in China, considering how they were defending everything China related like 3 months ago, and saying a bad word about China was considered very bad. If you said anything good about Hong Kong, then the NBA was very angry at you. This certainly puts that in a different light.
Well, Steve Kerr said that's a complicated issue, when he was asked whether he supported democracy and the First Amendment in Hong Kong. And, it is wild. I mean, I think what this represents more than anything else is, we all know this, but just how interconnected we are as a world, that decisions that are made in China that seem very far away, and certainly for most of human history would have not impacted people on this side of the globe, can not only impact people, they can do it instantaneously. And so the hope is here that we can marshal all the resources of the world's brilliant people, and we need basically a Manhattan Project to fight this global pandemic. Now, I do think that there is an element of hysteria that has sort of taken over, right? And so I've been talking about that and tweeting about it, to try to, because I do think fear at this point in time becomes as big of a danger almost as the pandemic itself, right? Because if people start to behave totally irrationally, it isn't helpful to any countries, and it doesn't lead to any sort of solution. And I hope that sports, by canceling here, is going to lead to a better result than we might otherwise have had. But I think it's hard to forecast. Like I said earlier, I think the question is, which of the spectrums are we going to head towards? Are we going to be more like South Korea, who appears to have vanquished this coronavirus thanks to great effort and work on their government's behalf and the people who live there? Or are we going to spiral further into a mess, like has happened certainly in Italy and much of other parts of Europe?
Well, Clay Travis, host of Fox Sports' nationally syndicated Outkick the coverage. Good luck on filling 3 hours, dude. I mean, I don't know how many recaps.
3 hours, 5 days a week, 15
oh my goodness.
hours a week of sports talk with no sports stories and games to discuss. It's going to be a hell of a challenge. For sure.
I mean, you're just going to have to do who's the greatest center fielder of all time for 2 hours a day. I mean, that's really...
open lines every day. We're just going to have a great debate. You have to. You only can pick one coach in the history of sports to win a game. Who are you taking? We'll do 3 hours on it probably one day.
Well, Clay, appreciate the time. Good luck. Stay safe out there, dude.
Hey, appreciate y'all having me on.